A bear brought her injured cub to the clinic, and the nurse started crying when she discovered the reason. The shrill cry of the security alarm pierced the pre-dawn stillness at Mountain Ridge Wildlife Clinic, jolting Sarah Matthews from her paperwork. Through the window of her office, the October sun had yet to crest the jagged peaks, leaving the world in that peculiar half-light where shadows played tricks on tired eyes. Sarah's hand instinctively reached for the tranquilizer gun in her desk drawer, a necessary tool in her line of work, though one she had always been reluctant to use. 15 years as a wildlife nurse had taught her that most confrontations could be resolved without it. But protocol was protocol. "Jerry, you seeing this?" She called out to the night security guard, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. The crackle of the radio preceded his response. "Camera 3, south entrance. You're gonna want to see this, Sarah." The security monitor in her office flickered to life as she punched in the command. The grainy footage showed a massive grizzly bear, her fur silver-tipped in the security lights, pacing in front of the clinic's reinforced doors. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Adult grizzlies rarely ventured this close to human structures, especially alone. But something was off about this one. The bear's movement wasn't aggressive, no charging, no territorial displays. Instead, she moved with an almost human-like anxiety, alternating between approaching the doors and retreating, her head constantly swiveling as if looking for something or someone. "She's been doing that for 10 minutes now," Jerry's voice crackled again. "Should I call Fish and Wildlife?" Sarah watched as the bear made another circuit, noting how she kept returning to the same spot by the doors. "No," she decided, trusting the instincts that had served her well throughout her career. "Something's wrong. This isn't normal behavior." Grabbing her coat and the tranquilizer gun, just in case, Sarah headed for the observation room adjacent to the south entrance. The reinforced windows would give her a better view while maintaining a safe distance. In person, the bear was even more impressive, standing easily 7 feet tall. When she rose on her hind legs to sniff the air, her muscle-bound frame spoke of power and survival. Yet there was something almost desperate in her movements, an urgency that seemed at odds with her imposing presence. "Hey there, Big Mama," Sarah whispered, though the bear couldn't hear her through the thick glass. "What's got you so worked up?" As if in response, the grizzly's head snapped toward the window, dark eyes locking onto Sarah's position with unsettling intelligence.
For a moment, neither moved. Sarah felt the weight of that gaze, centuries of instinctual fear battling with her professional curiosity. But in those eyes, she saw something that made her heart skip a beat: recognition. The bear dropped to all fours and took several steps backward, still maintaining eye contact. Then, with a deliberate motion that seemed impossible for a wild animal, she raised her right paw and gestured, toward the forest before turning and lumbering away into the darkness. Sarah stood frozen, her mind struggling to process what she'd just witnessed. In all her years working with wildlife, she'd never seen anything like it. The gesture had been so purposeful, so clearly communicative, that it defied everything she knew about Ursan behavior. "Jerry," she called into her radio, her voice barely above a whisper. "Did you see that?" "Yeah," he responded, sounding equally stunned. "Think she'll be back?" "I'm certain of it," Sarah replied, already moving toward the clinic's main treatment area. "And I think she wants us to be ready when she does." The next hour was a blur of preparation. Sarah moved through the clinic with practiced efficiency, setting up the large animal treatment area, checking supplies, and reviewing protocols for bear cubs, because somehow she knew that's what this was about. Mother bears didn't seek out human contact unless their young were in danger. Dawn was breaking over the mountains when the security alarm sounded again. This time, Sarah was ready. The mother bear had returned, but she wasn't alone. Behind her, struggling to keep pace, was a cub about 6 months old. Even from a distance, Sarah could see the reason for the mother's desperate visit. A cruel metal snare was wrapped around the cub's front leg, the wound clearly infected. "Oh, little one," Sarah breathed, her heart breaking at the sight. The mother bear's behavior suddenly made perfect sense. She had tried to help her cub, and, finding herself unable to remove the snare, had made the extraordinary decision to seek human assistance. The mother bear guided her injured cub to the clinic's doors, then stepped back, looking directly at Sarah through the observation window. The message was clear: help him. Sarah's hand trembled as she reached for her radio. "Jerry, I need you to initiate Protocol 7B and call Dr. Peterson. Tell him it's an emergency. We're about to attempt something that's either brilliant or crazy." As she prepared to help this unusual family, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she was about to be part of something unprecedented. The trust this wild mother was placing in her defied everything she thought she knew about the natural world. Now she had to prove worthy of that trust. The next moments would require perfect orchestration. Sarah knew the delicate balance they were about to attempt, helping an injured cub while keeping both the mother's protective instincts and everyone's safety in check would be like walking a tightrope. "Dr. Peterson is 15 minutes out," Jerry's voice crackled over the radio. "Want me to call backup?" Sarah watched the mother bear, noting how she maintained a careful distance, close enough to watch her cub, but far enough to show she wasn't a threat. No, Sarah decided. More people might spook her. She's shown incredible trust, getting this far. Let's not break it. The clinic's protocol for large predators typically involved sedation of both mother and cub, but Sarah sensed this situation called for a different approach. The mother bear's behavior was so far removed from the norm that conventional procedures seemed inadequate. "Jerry, I need you to open the outer gate to the treatment enclosure." Slowly. The mechanical whir of the gate seemed thunderous in the tense silence. The mother bear's ears twitched at the sound, but she remained steady, her eyes fixed on Sarah. The cub whimpered, clutching its injured leg close to its body. "That's it, Mama," Sarah murmured, though her words couldn't carry through the glass. "You're doing great." With agonizing slowness, the mother bear nudged her cub toward the open gate. The young one hobbled forward, leaving spots of blood on the concrete. The snare had cut deep. Sarah's medical training kicked in, cataloging symptoms: infection likely, possible muscle damage, immediate treatment necessary. Once the cub was inside the enclosure, Sarah faced the most crucial moment. Standard protocol would demand securing the cub alone, but the mother's behavior suggested a different possibility. Making a decision that would have her colleagues questioning her sanity, Sarah opened the inner door to the treatment area. "Sarah," Jerry's voice held a warning. "What are you doing?" "Trust me," she responded, though her heart hammered in her chest. "She's not going to leave her cub, and I don't think we should make her." The mother bear watched intently as Sarah stepped into the treatment area, keeping her movements slow and deliberate. The cub had huddled in a corner, shivering with pain and fear. Its mother remained just outside the gate, her massive frame blocking the exit but making no move to enter. "Okay, little one," Sarah spoke softly, maintaining eye contact with the mother bear as she approached the cub. "Let's see what we can do about that leg." The next few minutes were a dance of trust and instinct. Sarah worked with careful precision, aware of every movement, every sound. The cub, despite its pain, seemed to sense her intentions and remained surprisingly still. Most remarkably, the mother bear watched without aggression, though her muscles remained tensed, ready to act if needed. Dr. Peterson arrived to find a scene that defied explanation. Sarah kneeling beside a bear cub, providing initial treatment, while its mother stood guard at the entrance. The veteran veterinarian froze, tranquilizer gun half raised. "Don't," Sarah called softly. "She's choosing to trust us. We need to trust her too." The next hours were a blur of careful medical work. The snare had indeed caused significant damage, requiring delicate surgery to remove and repair the wounded tissue. Throughout the procedure, they worked with the treatment area door open, allowing the mother bear to watch. She never moved from her post, her eyes tracking every movement of the medical team. "I've never seen anything like this, Doctor," Peterson muttered as he cleaned the wound. "This goes against everything we know about wild animal behavior." Sarah thought about the mother's desperate pacing earlier that morning, her deliberate gesture toward the forest. Maybe we don't know as much as we think we do. The surgery revealed the full extent of the damage. The snare, an illegal trap that should never have been there, had been on the cub's leg for at least 2 days. There were signs that the mother had tried to remove it herself. Tooth marks scored the metal in places, showing her desperate attempts to free her child. She must have tried everything she could think of, Sarah said, examining the mangled trap. When she couldn't help him herself, she made the incredible decision to trust us, the very species responsible for hurting him in the first place. As they worked, Sarah found herself talking softly, explaining each step to both the cub and its vigilant mother. Whether the bears understood her words didn't matter. Her tone seemed to soothe them both. The cub remained remarkably calm under the anesthetic, its small chest rising and falling steadily. Halfway through the procedure, Sarah noticed something that brought tears to her eyes. The mother bear had laid down at her post, her posture relaxed but alert, a sign of trust that seemed almost impossible. She was choosing to believe that these humans, despite being the source of her cub's pain, would help make it right. "The leg will heal, doctor," Peterson announced finally, applying the last bandage. "He's young and strong. A few weeks of antibiotics and rest, and he should make a full recovery." Sarah nodded, but her mind was already on the next challenge. They needed to keep the cub under observation for at least a few days, but separating it from its mother was out of the question. They would need to completely rewrite their protocols, create a new approach for this unprecedented situation. As the anesthetic began to wear off, the cub stirred weakly. The mother bear immediately rose to her feet, but still made no aggressive move. She waited, watching as Sarah stepped back, giving the cub space to orient itself. What happened next would stay with Sarah for the rest of her career. The cub, groggy but aware, looked first at its bandaged leg, then at its mother, and finally at Sarah. In that moment, 3 species shared a connection that transcended the natural order, a bridge of trust and gratitude that shouldn't have been possible. The following days at Mountain Ridge Wildlife Clinic were unlike anything Sarah had experienced in her career. The mother bear's continued presence forced them to adapt their entire operation, creating a new template for what was possible in wildlife rehabilitation. "She's actively helping us help her cub." The veteran veterinarian shook his head in amazement. "It challenges everything we assume about wild animals. The level of comprehension she's showing, it's beyond anything I've seen in 40 years of practice." As the days passed, Sarah spent increasingly more time observing the bears, documenting every interaction, every subtle communication. She began to notice patterns in the mother bear's behavior, how she would position herself differently depending on her cub's needs, how she used specific vocalizations to comfort or guide it. One evening, while completing her notes, Sarah found herself reflecting on the larger implications of what they were witnessing. The prevalent view of wild animals as purely instinct-driven beings was being challenged right before their eyes. This mother bear was displaying levels of reasoning and emotional intelligence that many would have deemed impossible. "You know what this means, don't you, Doctor?" Peterson said, joining her at the observation window. "We need to completely reassess our approach to wildlife rehabilitation. If this level of cooperation is possible, imagine what else we might achieve." Sarah nodded, watching as the mother bear adjusted the straw around her sleeping cub. "It's not just about rehabilitation. It's about recognition, acknowledging that these beings we share the planet with are capable of so much more than we've given them credit for." The moment was interrupted by a commotion from the front of the clinic. Jerry's voice came urgently over the radio. "Sarah, we've got fish and wildlife officers here. They're demanding to see the bears." Sarah felt a protective surge of anger. She had known this confrontation was coming. Keeping 2 grizzly bears at the clinic without official oversight was bound to draw attention eventually. But she also knew that bureaucratic interference now could shatter the delicate trust they had built. "Tell them I'll be right there," she responded. already moving toward the front entrance. As she walked, she steeled herself for the battle ahead. These bears weren't just patients anymore. They represented a breakthrough in understanding between humans and wildlife, and she was determined to protect that breakthrough at all costs. The mother bear watched her go, and Sarah could have sworn she saw understanding in those deep brown eyes. Whatever came next, they were in this together, human and bear, united by a trust that defied explanation but demanded protection. The confrontation in the clinic's lobby was tense from the start. Two fish and wildlife officers stood with clipboards and stern expressions, their official vehicles visible through the front windows. "Miss Matthews," the senior officer began, "we've received reports of unauthorized housing of dangerous predators. You know the protocols for dealing with habituated bears." Sarah straightened her spine, channeling the same calm authority she'd used with the mother bear. "With all due respect, Officer Collins, this situation falls outside standard protocols. What we're witnessing here is unprecedented." She led them to the observation area, explaining the extraordinary circumstances that had brought the bears to the clinic. As they watched the mother bear tenderly adjusting her cub's position to protect its healing leg, even the officer's professional detachment began to waver. "I understand your concerns," Sarah continued, "but these bears aren't becoming habituated. The mother made a conscious choice to seek help, and once her cub is healed, I'm confident they'll return to their natural behaviors." The younger officer consulted his clipboard. "There's no precedent for this kind of situation. The regulations clearly state." "Sometimes, Dr. Peterson interrupted, joining them, "we need to recognize when our regulations need to catch up with reality. What we're seeing here could revolutionize wildlife rehabilitation." The discussion continued for hours, moving from the observation area to Sarah's office, where she presented her detailed documentation of the bear's behavior. Finally, a compromise was reached. The bears could stay until the cub's recovery was complete, but under official observation and with protocols in place for their eventual release. As the officers left, Sarah felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She returned to the recovery enclosure, where the mother bear acknowledged her presence with a gentle rumble. "We did it, Mama," Sarah whispered. "We're going to see this through together." The following weeks brought more changes. The cub's strength returned rapidly, and soon it was moving around the enclosure with only a slight limp. The mother bear began spending more time near the enclosure's outer gate, her instincts clearly telling her it was almost time to return to the wild. Sarah found herself struggling with mixed emotions. The scientist in her new release was the only right outcome, but she had grown deeply attached to these remarkable beings. Every successful treatment, every moment of connection, had deepened her understanding of the complex emotional lives of these animals. The day of release arrived with the first snow of winter. They had chosen a remote location deep in the bears' original territory, far from human settlements, but rich in natural food sources. As they prepared for transport, Sarah noticed the mother bear's behavior had shifted. She was more alert, more focused on the world beyond the enclosure. "She knows," Sarah told Dr. Peterson as they loaded the transport cage. "She's ready to go home." The journey to the release site was quiet, broken only by occasional soft grunts between mother and cub. Sarah rode in the back of the transport vehicle, maintaining a calming presence until the end. When they reached the designated spot, surrounded by snow-covered pines and pristine wilderness, something remarkable happened. As Sarah opened the transport cage, the mother bear paused. Instead of rushing out immediately, she turned and met Sarah's gaze. In that moment, Sarah felt the full weight of what they had achieved, not just healing a wounded cub, but building a bridge between two worlds that most thought could never connect. The mother bear led her cub out of the cage, both of them testing the snow-covered ground. The cub's healed leg held strong as it bounded forward, obviously excited to be back in its natural environment. But then, in a final extraordinary gesture, the mother bear turned back one last time. She raised her right paw, the same gesture she had used that first morning at the clinic. and held it there for a moment before turning to follow her cub into the forest. Sarah stood watching until they disappeared among the trees, tears freezing on her cheeks in the winter air. "You know, Doctor," Peterson said softly, "nothing at the clinic will ever be quite the same after this." Sarah nodded, knowing he was right. Their experience with the bears had fundamentally changed their understanding of wildlife rehabilitation. It had shown them that the barriers between humans and animals were perhaps more permeable than anyone had imagined. In the months that followed, Sarah worked to document and share their experience, careful to emphasize the exceptional nature of the situation while highlighting its broader implications for wildlife conservation. The story of the mother bear who sought human help became a powerful argument for more compassionate and nuanced approaches to wildlife management. Mountain Ridge Wildlife Clinic implemented new protocols, allowing for greater flexibility in treating injured wildlife alongside their family groups when possible. Other rehabilitation centers began exploring similar approaches, leading to a gradual shift in how the field viewed animal intelligence and emotional capacity. Sarah often found herself at the observation window in the early mornings, remembering that first desperate dawn when a mother's love had transcended the natural order. While she never saw those particular bears again, regular reports from forest rangers confirmed sightings of a mother grizzly and her healthy juvenile cub in the release area, both thriving in their natural habitat. But perhaps the most profound legacy of their extraordinary encounter was the reminder that trust, when given the chance to grow, could bridge even the widest of gaps. In a world often divided between human and wild spaces, the mother bear had shown that connection was possible, one brave step at a time. As Sarah finally completed her official report on the case, she added a personal note. In the end, it wasn't just about healing a wounded cub. It was about healing our understanding of what's possible when we open ourselves to trust, even from the most unexpected sources. The mother bear taught us that sometimes the greatest wisdom comes not from our scientific knowledge, but from our willingness to believe in something extraordinary